Before we start this episode, I wanted to tell you that if you're looking for free dog training courses, you can take the Victoria Stilwell Academy's most popular free course, Building Your Dog's Confidence, right now by going to vsdogtrainingacademy.com. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Okay, now on with the podcast. Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast, as well as online. We've got people joining us on Zoom, so I love it when people come in. I love it when we do this live. This is a roundtable that I do with my team every month, and we have fabulous members from the team from the Victoria Stilwell Academy and also from Positively. So let me introduce Lorena and Tiffany, Wendy, Jamie, Maya, Tara, and Laura. And we are here to chat today about something that is very dear and close to my heart, and that is change in dogs. Now, before we get to talking about how dogs cope with change, I want to alert everybody to the Dog Behavior Conference. Yes, the Dog Behavior... I'll say that again. The Dog Behavior Conference is coming up very soon, April the 19th to the 21st. We do have the most amazingly wonderful speakers. And the Dog Behavior Conference, it's our 11th year, everybody, our 11th year of doing this after COVID, because it used to be in person. And then during COVID, it had to go online. And then when COVID finished, well, I know it's still here, but when it finished, then being as dangerous as it was, we decided that actually we were going to just keep this online, because online means that it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you can join. And that's why I love the Dog Behavior Conference. And unlike other conferences, it's not where you just come in and you go and listen to your presenter and that's it. Even if there's a live Q&A, everybody's in the same room at the same time, listening to the same presentation and chatting throughout. And then also they have a chance to ask questions live to the presenters after the presentations are finished. So it's 3 days, 8 hours of amazing information. But we don't expect people to sit there and for 3 days. I do it because I have to MC the whole thing, but we don't expect people to do that. And that's why after you register and the presentations go out live, you have access to all of the presentations and the Q&As for a year afterwards. So I always think it's great. And look, it's just great value for money, because we do have some wonderful speakers talking about a whole range of topics. And if you want to know more, please go to dogbehaviorconference.com and register, and we hope to see you there. One of the things that we're going to talk about today, and this is going to start today's roundtable off, is this whole subject of change. And I have experienced change in my life, great changes in my life in the last year with the death of my mother, and now having to sell her house. And all of these changes have been very stressful to deal with. I guess increased my anxiety, and also I don't like change. I love things to stay where they are. And not only have I had that, which is a massive loss, I also have had a loss of a different nature, but it still is, as in now I'm an empty nester because my daughter's at college. And that in itself is also really upsetting for me, because we're very close and I miss her. So we thought about the subject of change. And now I've seen it in my dog, because as well as all of that, my beautiful Bella, my Shih Tzu Bella, passed away 6 weeks ago now. And Jasmine, my 13-year-old Chihuahua, who I don't think they were the greatest of friends, but they relied on each other. And definitely Bella was Jasmine's anchor. And now our anchor has gone. And so I've seen behavioral differences. And the first thing that I notice is that even though Jasmine is not the biggest outside dog, she still likes going for her sniffy walks. She still liked it. And when I would take Bella for a walk, Jasmine would always want to come too. So, and the two of them would just go sniff, and they could sniff for hours if I let them. Now Bella has gone, Jasmine does not want to sniff. She does not want to go outside. In fact, she does not want to go outside at all. Now, I saw this after Sadie, my Labrador, died, and that was about 5 years ago now, maybe even 6 years ago now. And I saw this change in her, and the way I dealt with it was just to go at her pace. I would put that harness and lead on her and say, hey, let's go for a walk. And if she basically said to me, I don't want to go, I listened to her. And gradually over time, she started to walk down the driveway and walk to our kind of normal walking path, do a little bit of a sniff. And then once she was done and she did a pee, then she would come back in. But I found that actually it was better, rather than forcing her to go for a walk, was for her to tell me what she wanted. And I'm having to do that again, but now even less. She wants to walk even less. And I want to get her out on a walk because she loves her sniffy walks. But Bella's not there as her anchor. I'm there, and that's okay. But Bella was her anchor. Bella was the kind of dog that was just there and was almost like it was her buddy that she could sniff with, even if they weren't sniffing together. Bella was just there. There's also another change that happened in the fact that I divide my time now more between Atlanta and New York City. And when I go to New York City, where I have an apartment there, I take Jasmine. I never took Bella there because I didn't want to fly her on a plane, and she's too big to be flown on a plane, and I don't want to put her in the hole, so that wasn't going to happen. So now Jasmine's coming up to New York. Now, Jasmine has never, ever in her life had what we call separation issues. Never. She doesn't maybe particularly like us going out, but she's like, all right, I'll see you later. I know you're coming back. You're fine. And she's always been absolutely fine, even when we're at somebody else's house, and not a problem. In New York, leave her alone in that apartment. There is howling, barking, crying, and it doesn't just go on for 5 or 10 minutes. It will go on for hours. Now, how do I know this? I know this because I was worried about leaving her by herself, but we had to go up to New York for a wedding. Our friends were getting married, and I took her up there, and I thought, well, you know, I've got all of her beds and all of her blankets that she's used to, and I put the music on and I got the lights on, and I know this is a different place, but, you know, we'll get her acclimated to it, and then it should be fine, and then we'll go to this wedding and it'll all be fine. Well, my timeline was very short, which was not good, but I really had no choice. And so we left her. And we got a phone call from one of the other lovely people that live in our apartment block, which is a small block. And they were like, yeah, your dog is howling. And I'm like, oh my God. So we looked on the webcam and saw that this dog that had previously, was just lying down, was now howling and barking and crying. And I ran down 10th with my heels, my wedding heels on, to go get my dog. And I brought her to the damn wedding because I'm like, I want to see my friends get married, but I don't want to have my dog stressing out anymore. And I know that if I'm holding her, she's fine. As long as I'm holding her, she's absolutely fine being outside in public. I'm going to take my dog to the wedding. And so the dog came to the wedding. And I hid the dog from the bride because I didn't want the bride seeing that I had this dog at the wedding. I truly did. Even when she came over to give us all a hug, I had Jasmine behind my back. I don't know why I did it. But when the groom came over, I had her in my arm and he was like, you got a dog? I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I had to get my dog because she had separation issues and she was howling. I'm really sorry. And anyway, so the dog came to the wedding. From then, we could not go out in the apartment without her crying and whining and howling, that howling. And you watch her put her head right up. So that's almost like her head is, you just see her chin as she howls the apartment down. And so we don't leave her by herself, right? Sort of separation anxiety 101. When we're now working with her, we're not going to leave her by herself. So she is in that stressed way. And now we're having to work on it. And she's 13 and she has never shown this before. But there's reasons why, because it's a completely different environment. And we didn't have enough time to introduce her and get her comfortable within the environment before we left her. We kind of did everything wrong because of time and because we're busy and because it just was not the environment she was used to, and she could not cope. That was her response to change. And I knew it. I was kind of worried about it because I could see that after Bella had gone, even though I had to go to England to work for a little bit and then close up my mum's house or start selling the house, I wasn't there for 10 days. When I came back, Jasmine was following me around a lot more than she ever did when Bella was there. And I became her significant person. Now, I know we have wonderful CSATs on here, fabulous people that do separation anxiety training. And that's not really what we're going to talk about today, though I do think I would like to maybe pick your brains a little bit. But I do want to discuss change. And maybe if we can start with change and how, yes, it's really hard for people to deal with change, even when you know what's going on, when you don't know what's going on, like our dogs don't really most of the time when we do things. How can we help our dogs? So Maya, if maybe you could take it from here.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I was thinking about how stressful that must have been for you. And you knew what was coming, right? And had a lot of control, or at least a lot more control than Jasmine did over what was happening. Air travel and then ground travel and then going out and being in a social environment. It's really stressful for humans as well, even when it's fun stress, right? It's still a lot. You come home pretty exhausted. And one of the things I was thinking about is how all of those things stacked on top of one another to create the howling behavior, I just can't cope behavior in Jasmine. And, trainers, sometimes we call it trigger stacking. One thing that comes to mind for me is sensitization, that feeling where everything around you, every noise is a little too loud and you jump, or every smell is just awful. That's the state of sensitization. And it's a state. It's not to a particular thing. It's to everything. So when we have a lot of change and we have little control, I think we are in that recipe for sensitization to whatever comes next. Could have been separation. It could have been introducing her to a new dog. You might have had a similar, oh, now I have an issue with her with new dogs, right? And so when we think about how to help our dogs cope, I was wondering and thinking, like, how can we do it so we don't end up introducing new stuff in the states of sensitization, like in that moment where everything's a little too loud or everything is just a little too overwhelming. And no matter what it is, no matter how careful it is, we're going to end up going to the wedding, which I'm so glad you got to bring her to the wedding after all that.
She was a little star at the wedding. She was almost like, oh, this is good. And, people, I wouldn't let anybody touch her because she doesn't really enjoy that. But she was just like, hey, I feel safe now because I'm in mum's arms. And then, of course, I'm just like, I'm trying to feel like, oh, nice wedding guest. I'm so excited for you guys because I was excited for them. And I just felt like I have failed my dog. I have failed my dog because of circumstance, because of everything she's had to endure with travel and everything. She's been to New York before. It's not the first time she's been to New York, Sherry. She's been to New York before. But after everything, you're right. It was just too much for her. And in that state of sensitization, everything, and you're right about that, where I saw that like a heightened awareness to everything. Because, of course, when you're in an apartment living, there's different sounds that you don't normally get here in my house. But there was also, I saw in different environments, like taking her outside for a walk, which is different when you're in Midtown Manhattan rather than when you're here in Atlanta. Taking her outside just to potty because you have to do that, right? there. then there was a shutdown. So now she'd gone from, because when Jasmine is more comfortable outside, and I use that with air quotes, she don't really like other dogs and she might shout at them sometimes. Well, boy, she was shouting at nobody. At nobody. And then when I realized that actually things were kind of calming down again, which I use in air quotes again, she began to shout again. That was like a few days later. So, yes, I feel like immediately I was worried about it. I had every reason to be worried about it because what I feared came true. And then I was like, well, now we have to work on how we can help my senior dog cope with all of this insane change in such a short space of time. So, Tiffany.
Yes, I was actually just thinking about, I have a senior dog as well. And when you were talking about, I really liked how you were talking about giving her, Jasmine, the choice when she wasn't wanting to walk as far or even potentially go outside. I've been experiencing that now with my senior dog, and he has arthritis and pain issues that we're addressing to the best of our ability. But I always listen to him, and I pick up the harness and the leash and I show it to him. And he knows what it means because he was always excited to wear it before and always excited to go before. So I know he knows, and I show it to him, and he will either come to me and say yes, or he will go over and lie down. And that's his answer to me that, no, I'm just not feeling it right now. And I think that is honestly one of the biggest gifts we can give our dogs, regardless of age, regardless of situation. If it's something that doesn't absolutely have to be done for their for their health or their well-being. I know there are certain circumstances in an emergency that situation where you have to do something that you'd rather not put them through, but all other times, if I can give them that choice and I can respect their decision and their wishes and be okay with it, I think that's one of the biggest gifts. So I would just really encourage people to consider that, whether especially coping with change, pain, changes in how you feel physically, changes in things that have happened in their lives, losing a housemate, dog or cat, which we recently did. And just anything anytime you can give them that choice, I think it's powerful.
And I was just thinking about how it's so important to be conscious of that and be really, really attuned as best you can to listening to what they're saying to you, because they are always talking to us. But in addition to that, and this is something that goes right back to you, Vic, you're going through a bunch of changes too. You were going and you were dealing with one thing on top of the other. So when you find yourself in that situation, it's also important to be kind to yourself and not to beat yourself up over it, because you are human. And if to be canine is divine, well, humans, we try our best. And of course, we're going to be messing up heck of a lot more. So it's important to make sure to be kind to yourself, be kind to your dog. And even if you haven't gone through a big change, it's only been a change for your dog, whether it's a brand new dog or a brand new rescue that's just come into your home. It's important to also recognize that there is a level of stress that you're going through as well. And just cut yourself some slack. You have to cut yourself some slack, just like you want to cut the dog some slack. It just happens, and that's just life. And yeah, it's never easy. It's never fun. I really think that when change happens, there's an element of, okay, now this is different. So a very basic change in the way that you think. One of the first things that you're thinking about is, am I safe? This is new. This is different. And as a result, yes, you're going to be a little bit more hyper aware about everything. You're going to be a lot more sensitive about everything. It's kind of like having an emotional sunburn. And it's just like that when you have a sunburn and just anything grazes your skin at that point, you're going to react in a way that's a bit more exaggerated. And that's to be expected. And that's something to keep in mind. And to also keep in mind that a new normal will come in, within these changes. Just be kind to yourself while it's happening. That's really, really, just really important.
I was just going to add very much similar to what Lorena was saying. And I'm so sorry for all your losses, Victoria. It's just a lot. And it's hard to anticipate how deeply these things can stack up for ourselves. And then I was also wondering, is Jasmine's probably pretty attuned to you. And she may well be, part of her distress comes from recognizing something with you is a little different, and that you're heightened in your even rushing around or not being available. But so it makes perfect sense, really, that she's so connected to you, that she's, together you're both trying to work through this. And fortunately, you do have each other, and that's a comfort to both of you, I'm sure. But it will take time. And Lorena had great ideas about just,
Yes, I appreciate that. It's definitely. I saw this quote, and it said, "When you lose a parent, it knocks you off your axis, and you don't." Nothing will ever be the same again. And that's exactly how I feel. And when you lose somebody that is important to you, whether it's a human or whether it's a dog, it knocks you off your axis, and nothing will ever be the same again. It will be different. And it doesn't mean to say it can't be good, but it won't be the same again. And that is something. And I think what you brought up, that sort of that feeling of safety as well, that how important it is to feel safe. And I know that even though I'd done some great work with the carrier, which is the backpack that Jasmine goes into when I travel, right? It's her little place, a place of solace, and it's fabulous. It was a piece of the furniture for a long time. And then she starts going in it herself. And then I start to put her on my back as I walk around the house just for a little bit. And then I let her out, and it's always down on the floor with the little flap door open. And then, and then we go for a walk outside with it. And so I'm like, I'm doing great work with this. But I always know then that time when I actually get to New York is not on my side. Neither is flying in an airplane. Neither is going in a bus. Neither is going on the train or the subway, whatever you do, or the taxi or whatever it is. That's a lot for anyone to take. New York City it's a different beast altogether. It's where I really cut my chops when it came to dog training. I mean, I was training in London. And then when we moved to the city in 1999, goodness me, when we moved there, and I started my dog training business, Dog Trainers of New York, and started schlepping around the city, going to different dog trainings, going to different apartments. And, it was so overwhelming for me living in that city and traveling in that city and everything. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. For 2 years living there, I hated it. And I said to my husband, I was like, I will not have children here. I will not. I can't. I don't like it. And I'm just not. So we moved to New Jersey, and I added Dog Trainers of New Jersey. So now I had Dog Trainers of New York and Dog Trainers of New Jersey. I had a business partner at the time. And I was better. It was in the suburbs. I lived in a lovely place. And we had a garden, and I could just get in the car and, go for walks and things like that. It was lovely. Or just step outside of my house and go for a walk, and there were trees. There was actual green. It was lovely. But I just didn't connect with the city. Now, of course, I know it more and I connect with it more. So I'm more grateful about being there. However, my dog Jasmine, who's been to the city, as I said a few times, just because I've worked up there so much with It's Me or the Dog. So she's been there. But she hasn't been there lately. And she's much older. She's there by herself. And it all happened too darn fast. And so I understand her. Lorena, what you said about animals feeling safe, they can be physically safe. She's totally, perfectly safe and comfortable in our apartment, but she doesn't feel safe. And she has that abandonment feeling, that howling. When are you coming back? We know that dogs howl because they want to reestablish contact. It's a way of them saying, hey, listen, where are you? It's the most awful thing to hear your dog howling, especially when they're alone. But it was very hard.
Are you a dog trainer looking to take your knowledge and skills to the highest level? Or maybe you're a dog guardian interested in figuring out whether your love of dogs can translate into more of a career than a hobby. Or are you already working in the pet industry but recognize that you need to fill some gaps when it comes to how to manage dog behavior so that you can better serve your existing clients? No matter where you are on your journey, the Victoria Stilwell Academy has courses that can help you get to where you want to go. From our free Building Your Dog's Confidence starter course to the powerful Fundamentals of Dog Training and Behavior course, all the way up to our flagship Professional Dog Trainer course, we have options for every skill level and budget. All you have to do is be passionate about giving dogs the best lives possible. All of our courses are available online anywhere around the world 24/7. No gimmicky sales tactics where you need to act within a certain window to enroll. My amazing team at the Victoria Stilwell Academy understands that we need to be ready to serve you whenever the time is right for you to make the jump. Whether that means dipping your toes into our free courses or realizing your fullest professional dog training dream by enrolling in the dog trainer course. So, join the thousands of dog geeks like you that are a part of our amazing and supportive VSA family today. We have Academy specialists available to talk with you and figure out how we can help you reach your dog training goals, or you can enroll in a starter course for free right now. The Victoria Stilwell Academy. It's the future of dog training.
Yeah, Tara.
So I was going to say, I mean, we went through the similar loss back in November with my older dog, and we tried to prepare the dogs for that big change that was coming when we knew it was inevitable because of her heart disease. And so we started taking measures of, having moments where she wasn't home. She went with one of us so that they could have some time that was in a home without her. And as we're looking forward to our next big step, which is bringing home a puppy, we're starting to plan for those transitions. There's going to be times in our life where things get thrown at us, just like what you've went through with all of the things that are building up, and where we can't plan for change. But when we can make it a little easier on everybody. So we've been starting to make those preparations now. I've got the puppy pen already set up. I mean, it's 8 weeks away, but it's already set up so that the dogs can adjust to the fact that, hey, this part of the house will kind of be off limits for right now. And so that when the puppy does come, that won't be a problem. We're doing some diet transitions because I'm thinking about the puppy coming in and what the puppy will be fed, that I don't want to have to change. The puppy's already going to experience so much change. They're leaving their mom. They're leaving the area that they know. They're leaving a whole different, kind of weather. So when they come in, I want my dogs to be able to pick up as much slack as they can, if you will, so that, the puppy can have a little bit easier transition. They won't have to think about puppy diet's also going to change. So those kinds of things. So I think there's going to be times in our life, is what I was trying to say, that we're not going to be able to plan for change. Change is going to hit us and we're going to have to deal with it. But where we can, I think that's one thing that we do well at VSA is predict how can we, enrich the dog's environment? How can we manage their environment so that the changes don't affect them as much? So that's what I wanted to add. We can plan for change too, where possible.
Yeah, how do you change? Like, what are some of the things maybe that we can do to help our dogs cope with change?
So
How do we do that?
So one of the things that, like, for us, we're starting to prepare, making sure that certain behaviors that we need in the household are a little firmed up. We've upped the reinforcement for waiting at doorways. We've upped the reinforcement value for being in the beds. We've, shown them that, hey, just because this area is off limits, there's great areas in the house that are still on limit and have great fun things in them. We've started doing a little bit more, feeding with the Kongs and that sort of thing that, hey, we slacked off on needing that right now. And so we're bringing stuff like that back in so they get used to, hey, there's going to be some alone time because I have to spend a little extra time with the puppy. So things like that, I think.
I just love that, Tara. I'm thinking about the times where we really do have the chance to prepare and how we can stagger in change. And I love that you brought up the example of a new dog, because we might go into it and go, well, how do we introduce the new dog before they're here? But you're thinking about all the environmental changes that will happen in your current household, in your current environment, that will need to be in place on her first day. And how can I bring those things in now? And I just wanted to highlight something that you said that really excited me, which was you talked about this is going to be a puppy space. So we're not going to make the day she arrives or the day he arrives the day that you can't enter this part of your home. At the same time, I'm going to make sure that it's not just the puppy pen is up, but the rest of the house gets super reinforcing for you, so that that's not a loss, and it's also not associated with your new puppy. And then there are so many great things what you said, but I also wanted to say, you mentioned sort of balancing change. That's something I think about a lot. So when your puppy comes home, that's a huge transition. It's huge transition because everything is different. It's also a huge transition because it's the first major transition of that dog's life, right? So they have no experience with transitions, good or bad. And there's a lot that you can do to soften it, but there's no way to make it not a big deal for the puppy. So having your other dogs adjust in their familiar environment as much as possible means that you can sort of balance who's taking on their shoulders, their withers, if you will, the burden of adjustments in their lives.
Yeah, I would say, and again, with Tara, I'm so glad you touched on bringing home a new puppy. We get that. I think we all get that question a lot, how to prepare. It's the same thing for bringing or having a baby. So you don't just bring home the baby. Eventually you bring home the baby, but all of the things that go along with the baby, or a big move from one home to another, or from a house to an apartment, or vice versa. There are so many changes that, as you said, Maya, you can plan for, you can prepare for, you have some notice. The dog doesn't have any notice in some of these cases, but you do. You know what's coming. You know what's going to be happening. So even with, training situations, going into people's homes, that they're not talking about a huge change or how do they handle that. I've always said the 3 Ps: preempt, prepare, and plan. So I try my best to stress that with any client, with anything, any behavior issue that they're having, or any change in big life change that they know will be coming up. Let's talk about how we can preempt something that we don't want to see or that we don't want the dog to experience. Let's talk about how we can plan and prepare for the things we do want them to experience or see. So it just takes a little bit of, sitting down and thinking it through and trying your best to, again, can't prepare for everything. We can't do that in our own lives, but to the best of your ability, I think you can prevent a lot of that emotional distress that some dogs feel when they're just kind of dropped into a situation. I just think of a move as being that example of, what happened. Technically, my people are still with me, and yeah, that is my bed and my toy, but everything else, the smell is completely different, and every sight and sound is completely different. That has to be so jarring. So, even even just examples of taking them, if you have access to your new home or new property ahead of time, I strongly encourage clients to take the dog on walks in that new neighborhood. Let the dog sniff that new yard. If you can get inside, if you have access, take them, if it's not too stressful, in the walkthrough where they can actually have access to the home. The day of the move, make sure they're somewhere safe and away from all of the chaos. And then hopefully prepare by placing their awesome stuff inside the home for the very first time you bring them in. So when they go sniffing, they find something that smells like them and something that is theirs, or something that they find enjoyable. These are just all, small things that if you think ahead, you can make that transition so much more smooth for them and less scary.
Yeah, and I think about that going the other way too, Tiffany. So if we move to a new neighborhood or a new home and we're close enough to the old neighborhood, you might drive back to that old neighborhood for your first week of walks in order to keep something the same. I'm thinking about all the ways in which the question is for me, what can I keep the same for you? And also, what matters to you that I could keep the same? Because sometimes it is an item. Sometimes it's the arrangement of items. In my old house, I slept on this side of the bed. In this arrangement, I could see this person in the bed where I was sleeping. I'm thinking of the dog. I'm voicing the dog here. Can we get that same arrangement here? And so noticing what your dog is doing now in their current environment, and I'm not necessarily only talking about a move, but let's say they really relax in the sunny spot on the couch. How can I make sure they have access to that kind of environment after the change where I'm seeing relaxation now? Those are the kinds of questions that I think about, like fading them in. Another thing that I think we can do is, if we know what environment we're going for, let's say we're bringing home a new family member, puppy, baby, other animal, other person, we can also think about how that environment will change and start to introduce elements of it now, smell, sounds, and sights, and introduce them into areas where your dog is already relaxing. Can we bring the sounds of the city into our suburban house if we're going to the city before they have to experience it in an unfamiliar environment, for example?
Another thing that I think a lot of people reach out to us about are not necessarily the dog experiencing the change, as in a move or traveling, but a loss of somebody in the home. So divorce or kids graduating and moving out on their own. They feel those losses. And unlike us, they don't understand why those people just disappeared. We know that they graduated and it's time to move out, but our dog just knows somebody's missing. And so things like that, I think it's important just to recognize that they may be doing some grieving.
You bring up a really important point, Jamie. I absolutely, that I'm grieving the loss of Bella. Jasmine's grieving the loss of Bella. We're all grieving. And then, of course, it was more than 2 years ago, but Jasmine's like her human sister leaves, which of course I don't think actually a lot of weight is put on maybe some parents are so happy to see their kids go. They're like, Alablimalulia, this is great. Now we're going to party. We're going to go back. We're going to get our lives back. I am not one of those people. I'm the one that says this is unkind. This is horrible. This is not fair. You raise a child for 18 years and then they go. What the F are you supposed to do? Now, fortunately, I work and I work really hard. But I know a lot of moms as well that are caretakers of their children and of their homes. And they also work really hard, but they work hard in their homes. And so they don't have the luxury of traveling to a different country to go film or doing this and getting out of the environment because they work. Either they have a job in their homes or they're homemakers. And that transition is even harder. And I'm like, this is just cruel. This is like being a mom and having your offspring ripped away from you. It's the way society makes it, especially here. It's a little bit different in parts of Europe where, kids kind of remain with the family. And then, anyway, that's another discussion. But I kept on saying to it, I know I did this live video of this is effed up. What? It's a hard transition for kids going to college. It's also a really hard transition for parents who have nurtured this thing for 18 years and gone through good and bad times with it. And now that's it. You're done. And of course, that they'll never be, and it'll never be like it was. And I also read something, an expert saying, you have just spent 90% of the time that you will ever spend with your child in the first 18 years of life. The rest of your life will be 10%. That's it. But you just used all your 90% with your child now before your kid goes to college or goes to work or does whatever. And that to me was just cruel. I see it as cruel. That kid was ripped away from me. And I'm being very dramatic here. But this is how I felt, right? I was also angry that my mum was taken away from me. I was also angry that Bella had to die. She was 16. Of course, it was her time. But, there's so much anger with that loss as well. And then there was this confusion. And then there was this I guess I have to effing accept it. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't accept it. Not right now. I'm not at that phase. I don't accept the fact that my kid, I'm so excited for her to be at college and I'm excited for everything she's achieving, but I don't accept being an empty nester. I also don't accept the fact that my mum's gone. I don't accept the fact that Bella has left us. And so you're right. Who said it? Lorena. And also, Wendy, I think that I'm in this state of my stress levels of which definitely ebb and flow have also been picked up by Jasmine. Who's, so if I'm going through this and that my dog is very same because we're very connected, Jasmine and I, of course she's going through it. And then she's trying to anchor to me. I'm I'm just everywhere. And then we go to this place, which I find overwhelming anyway. I like it, but I find it. And she's like, what the hell's going on? And we're just a big mess. And it sounds a bit more chaotic than it is. But it's it's ripped. My heart has been ripped. And now I am a bit more sensitive to stuff. I know exactly what you're saying, Maya. I am. I'm a little bit less resilient. I'm a bit more shut down at times. I'm a bit more reactive at others. I am a bit more intolerant of stuff that I normally would tolerate. And there's a whole smorgasbord of stuff. And that's probably because of my age as well. That's a whole other thing, a whole other layer that you got to put of women of my age having to go through the change and then all that crap that comes with it. So, it's a lot. So when talking about change in humans, my God, how can we help our dogs get through that change? And fabulous. I love all of that of trying to introduce her. Sometimes though, guys, you cannot do that. I maybe could have taken her into the city and gone into an apartment block and done that. And what I could have done here in Atlanta. Nothing prepares you for New York City. I did do a lot of work around that travel bag. That was a godsend. Thank goodness I could do that. But let's think about animals as well that come from rescue centers, rescue organizations. For all the puppy mill stuff that I've done and puppy mill rescues that I've done, great 400 dogs and puppies in puppy mills that we are now taking away and putting either into a rescue shelter or to foster homes before they get adopted into homes. I mean, my goodness, talk about change. That is crazy. So I know I've kind of gone off, but off on that. But I think I hope you hear the passion in my voice because it's really tough. So maybe it's all about building resilience, Tara. What do you say about that? Because I know you've had a lot of loss too. So how do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we are very fortunate to be living in a society right now where we have access to things that we might not have had in the past. So there's, courses online for us to be able to get the help that we need, learn about self-care and those types of things. The VSA has put out the Building Resilience course to help dogs on that side of the equation. So I think a lot of it is about how can we introduce small changes in a structured way to help grow ourselves and our dogs. So, moving the bed for some dogs just a couple of inches to the right can be just enough of a change to let them start to grow and change. I wouldn't take that bed and move it to a whole nother room initially, but just a couple of inches can matter so much. I mean, we have research, where dogs can tell the difference between a bulb moving just to the left or just to the right. So it's not like they can't recognize small changes. So I think that's it. It's, can we introduce small changes in a way that our dogs can understand it or perceive it, rather, not necessarily understand, that's not going to stress them out and will grow them so they can handle bigger changes later in life.
Yeah, our Building Resilience course at positively.com. I mean, it's part of the Brave course, Coping Strategies for Every Dog. And the Building Resilience that's what it is. And, we try and be very careful. We try and do gradual exposure. We try and, great. But sometimes, as I think Lorena said, sometimes things are just going to happen. Or is it Tiffany? Some things are just going to happen. They're going to happen fast. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I feel that, like when I'm working on a puppy mill bust and I am literally putting my hands on breeding dogs that really have had terrible interactions with people, virtually no interactions with people except maybe one puppy farmer. And that's it. And I am going in it and having to grab them as they're trying to escape from me and put them in a crate so that they can be taken away and for medical attention. And I mean, my God, I'm thinking of that, of how difficult that is. And then those dogs that come from a shelter. And also what we have, especially in Europe or in the UK, is a lot of dogs coming from shelter organizations in Europe, places like Romania and Hungary. And now these are dogs that have been on the street and they've never lived in a home. And now they have a roof over their head. And now they're living in a house with microwaves and phones making noises and all kinds of things and people coming in. And that to me is like, there's so many things that we can focus on when we're talking about change, about how to deal with it. But I think you're right. I think that everybody makes really important points that we have to, like, if we can prepare as much as we can, there are going to be times when you can't, but if we can prepare as much as we can to begin with and really build that dog's resilience as much as we can, prepare for a situation, knowing that there's always going to be something else that's going to be thrown into the mix, but try and prepare for that situation. But also with the knowledge that things might all not go according to plan and that have something that you can do to cope with it. Have a plan that if something doesn't go according to plan and that your dog needs a bit of help, then have something that you can work with. This, I'd like to discuss this. Maybe I think if we can talk about anxiety, I think that's what we're going to talk about next month is anxiety. And I'd like to focus on separation. What does that look? What do separation issues look like? A separation issue is different from separation anxiety. Like what can we do to help our dogs when you do go out or that are having a tough time being by themselves or being without you or transitioning to different places? Thanks so much for everybody who from the team. I absolutely love you. You are brilliant in everything that you bring to this podcast, but also that you bring to VSA and to Positively, some of the best minds in the business. I thank you so much, Lorena and Tiffany, Wendy, Tara, Maya, Jamie, and Laura. And for those of you who want to find more about like how can you build resilience in dogs, please go to positively.com. We have so much great information there on positively.com, but also fabulous courses that you can take. And the course that I was talking about is Brave, Coping Strategies for Every Dog. And there we talk about creating confidence and building resilience and encouraging adaptability and creating choice and all of those very important things that we can give dogs to help them cope and transition. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on the podcast. I love our listeners, and thank you so much for coming here and listening, and for your, I don't know, all the wonderful comments that you give us on the podcast. We love doing them, and we love having our guests. So thank you for that. We will be returning with our wonderful panel in a month's time. But listen out for future podcasts with other amazing people. So thanks, guys, everybody, and take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together, positively.